and welcome to this week's YouTube video. This week I will be showing you how I painted this black cat in Procreate. If you are not familiar with my channel, I am a fine artist who paints in oils, who has turned their hand to a bit of digital art. Every 4 weeks I do a Procreate tutorial to show you how to get those fine art skills into your digital artwork. This artwork took me 7 hours, so it is not possible to show you stroke by stroke. I will, however, show you the principles of how I did this cat and discuss the theory behind it, so that if you want to have a go at this style yourself, you will know how to do it. I should stress, painting theory is complicated. I am still learning myself. Stick with it though, because once mastered, you will be able to paint anything. Before I show you the video, let's have a look at the sort of brushes you will need to do this artwork. I used a selection of wet brushes. These were the turpentine brush, Procreate, the bristle brush, Blend Stump Wax, and fine wet liner, all from the Pro oil paint brushes that I purchased from Tip Top Brushes, and the surface scratch brush that I imported from Photoshop. These are found in Kyle T. Webster's concept brushes. If you do not have access to Photoshop, you can use a textured brush like the stucco brush in Procreate instead. Let's now have a look at the time-lapse video, and I will speak about my process as we go along. For speed, I have drawn around my reference photo. If you want to practice your drawing, I would suggest doing it freehand. I have a separate layer for my drawing, and this sits at the top of my layers panel on a separate layer. It allows me to check the accuracy of my drawing throughout the artwork. I have started off with 2 layers. One is my background layer and the other is my cat. At this stage, I am keeping them separate. Notice how there is a lot of orange in my cat's fur. I am going to do this exactly as I would in oils. I'll start with an orange undercolour and add my dark browns and reds and blacks on top. I am using the turpentine brush just to get the basic colours of my cat mapped in. I'll then start adding my colour onto my background layer to give me a closer value and colour hue for that pavement. Next, I'll start to paint over my cat on layer 2. I will explain why I do this later, but it is very important to understand that this type of painting requires you to work on the painting as a whole. I am using the Blend Stump brush. Working very specifically section by section on different layers will not give you the looseness this style requires. I do use lots of layers, but I tend to use them as a way to add texture, or if I like an area I've done and want to leave it untouched. Looking at my time-lapse video, you can also see I have added a bit of texture with my surface scratch brush. I start a new layer and begin to work on my cat again. But why am I doing this? Edges. Correct edges are really important for achieving painterly artwork. My edges can either be hard, there will be a definite edge. For example, think of an object like a brick. My edges can also be soft. A good example that demonstrates this would be wispy clouds. Or my edges can be lost. Think about those really misty days where it is very difficult to see clearly. For artwork to be painterly, it needs all of these edges. Look at what happens when I give this cat all hard edges. It looks a bit odd, doesn't it? Now look at what happens when I make them all soft. Again, it still looks less effective. Now look at what happens when I lose them. Well, where's the cat gone, you may ask? Notice how in the finished painting I have a combination of hard, soft and lost edges. How do you know where to put them? Remember that your eyes will be drawn to hard edges. So here my hardest edge is in the central point of interest. The central point of interest is where I want my viewer to look. As I move away from this area, my edges can get softer until they become lost in the periphery. This mimics how the eye sees things and is a good general rule to follow. How how do I use my brushes to give me this effect? There are a number of ways. Soft edge number 1. Take a wet brush like the turpentine brush, turn the opacity down to between 30 to 50% and begin to pull out your object using the object's colour. So here my object is brown and I am using brown to pull my object into the background, or I can pull my background into my object. Here my background is blue, so I'm using blue and pushing it into my object. Be rigorous with your strokes. Soft edge number 2. Again, using a wet brush, create a layer underneath your object and begin to push and pull it about. Push the background colour into your object and your object colour into your background. You can then take your rubber and gently begin to rub out your top layer to reveal more of the bottom layer underneath. You'll need to turn the opacity right down on the rubber to around 20% and then play about with the effect by varying how hard you press. This is what I basically did on the edge around the tail to give me that effect. Soft edge number 3. Using the blend stump wax brush, you need to dab layers of paint onto your object, just like this. Imagine you are stabbing at your screen. Be rigorous with your strokes, but don't break your iPad. Vary your opacity to give you different effects. You can see me doing this effect later on in the painting, where I am adding transparent blue to that tail. Complementary colours. I cannot stress how working with complementary colours will improve your artwork. If I show you the colour wheel, complementary colours sit opposite each other, so blue and orange, red and green, yellow and purple. When you put complementary colours together, they look amazing. The biggest mistake digital artists make is to use the colour picker on their reference photo to tell them what colour they think they are seeing. Do not do this. You will need to judge the colour by eye, and working in complementaries will help you. When you look at your reference photo, there will be a mixture of warm and cool colours. To make your painting work, you need this mixture of warm and cool in it. If we go back to our colour wheel, red is our warmest colour, and as it moves away from this, the colour gets less warm. Red, orange and yellow are warm colours, blue is cool. Purple and green are transitionary colours because they can be both warm and cool. But what does warm and cool colours have to do with complementary colours? Simply put, one colour is warm and one colour is cool. Orange is warm, blue is cool. Red is warm, green is cool. Yellow is warm, purple is cool. This gives us our warm, cool palette. And I already know before I start that it will work because complementary colours look amazing when used together, and one colour will neutralise the other and give me a range of fabulous neutrals. Even though I am working with a brown, I am working with an orange brown. Therefore, the complementary pairing I want with this is blue. This painting will be based around the pairing of orange and blue. I need to make sure that I include blue in my cat and also orange in my pavement area too, as this will add balance to my painting. When adding the opposite colours to your object and background, make sure you turn your opacity right down and work with strokes under 50% opacity. Also, use a wet brush too. I tend to alternate between the blend stump wax brush and the turpentine brush. You can see shades of blue throughout my cat. It is much more subtle in the tail. Had I used my colour picker on my reference photo, it would have just told me I was looking at a very muted orange. A transparent blue will work much better to mute that orange and look more effective. Brushwork. You need to build your brushwork in transparent layers of paint using different brushes. For example, I may lay a stroke like this. I may then adjust my transparency and vary my colour a little and then add another one like this. I may then change my brush, adjust my colour and my opacity again and then add another stroke. I will vary my hand action too. In some areas, I may lay much smoother strokes, so my hand action is slower and more deliberate. In other areas, I may be more rigorous and scribble across my iPad. I may stab at it like this to give a dabbing effect. The whole point is to lay a variety of strokes with different colours and different temperatures at different transparencies. I can even use my rubber to take away sections too. Layers. Finally, I want to talk about my layers and how important it is to work on the painting as a whole. If I show you my layer panel, you'll see all these layers relate to my cat. When I do a section I like, I start a new layer. Also, I did this artwork over several days. When I started a new session, I would also start a new layer. At this point in the painting, I am starting on the background again, so everything goes over the top of what I've done. I am painting the background over my cat and using my rubber to get rid of the areas I don't want. I am doing it this way because I am trying to integrate those feet into the artwork. I need soft edges around this area, otherwise it will be very jarring on the eyes. I am using my wet brushes to push my object into the background and the background into my object, just as I showed you in the edges section of this video. I've used a combination of brushes on that pavement to get the textured effect. I start with my most textured brush and then begin to add transparent layers of paint over the top using my wet brushes, just like this. The textured brush gives me very harsh edges. By painting over it with a wetter brush, it helps to soften it up a little and give me the effect I'm after. I add the whiskers using a pencil brush. And that is it, the finished artwork. I hope you have enjoyed today's video and found it useful. Please like and subscribe if you can, and check out my website sarahhallidayart.com, where you will find examples of my work and also details of online classes that I run. Thank you for watching and see you for the next one.